Welcome to the show. Today, Nasty and I have a great guest for you. Keon Raymond, perennial CFL All-Star, two-time Grey Cup champ, President's Ring winner. Not only was he an amazing football player, but an amazing contributor to our community. We talk about his career, his life, his family, his business. He is the personification of faith, family, and football. Welcome to the ride. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the ride with Chevy and Nasty. Very excited. We have a great guest today. A guy I've gotten to know a little bit off the field. A guy Randy played a lot of years in the CFL with. This guy, Keon Raymond, is the father of four. He's the husband of one, and he played 9 years in the CFL. Over that time, he put together 366 tackles, 11 sacks, 26 INTs, 8 of which he returned for touchdowns. There might have been a couple of punt returns there as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, two-time Western All-Star, two-time Grey Cup champ. He's got all the awards. Probably the one I'm most impressed about, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is he's a Calgary Stampeders President's Ring winner. That's one guy per year gets it, and it's the most dedicated, meaningful, impactful person on the team and in the community. And getting to know Keon Raymond today, guys, that's just how he lives his life. Keon, welcome to the ride.
Hey, man, thank you guys for having me, man. I sure appreciate it. Hey, Nasty, I'm going to have to get you to open up introduction for when I go and speak, because that was awesome.
I'll be right back. Chevy's even better. He's got that Italian thing going on him, but yeah, for sure. Hey, Keon, did we get it right? Because, I mean, we just went on Wikipedia, so whatever Wikipedia says, we're taking it as fact. Did we miss anything?
No, you got it all right. One thing that you did miss, though, was I am the franchise leader in interception return yards for the Stampeders.
Hey, there you go.
Like 700. You know what? And I was talking to one of my players the other day, and they was like, man, to get 700 yards in a season as a receiver, I mean, that's a great year, and as a defensive back to have 700 interception return yards, throughout a career. I just knew offensive guys didn't like to tackle. That's why they play offense. So,
well, once you get through the first wave of athletic guys, then you just got to dodge through a couple of 300-pounders and a quarterback that doesn't want to hit anyone. I mean, it's home free.
That's it.
I watched your highlight film today before you came on the show, and you were tackled twice by offensive linemen. But
you know what? One of those was probably because my shoe was untied, and
yeah. Anyway, that kind of blows me. That and honestly, your whole 11 sacks, that kind of makes me feel a little bit like underappreciated. I think I had like 38 sacks in my whole career. Here's a DB that's got a respectful number, but 20. How much of those touchdowns that you got were from INTs? Do you remember?
Yes, 6 of them was from INTs. So I ended up
1 out of 5.
Yeah, so like crazy. Literally, man, it was I just knew that growing up, my daddy always used to say, man, it was like, catching interception is good, but get your name in the paper to return it to the house. Yeah. I mean, that's how you get your name in the paper.
and you know what, Keon? That was the big thing about you. I mean, we played so many years. I was there for the start. And, one thing we could rely upon you, whether you're playing defensive back or when they moved you up to the Sam linebacker spot, you were always in a position not just to make a play, but to make a big play. And you came up big in times we needed it. Like, you didn't get an interception for a touchdown at the end of the game when a quarterback's chucking it up because they're losing and they're trying to catch up. You got it in key moments where we needed that touchdown or that interception to put the offense back. What was your most memorable one? I think there was one against Saskatchewan that was it wound up being like a 10 or 15 point turnaround because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what, man? Honestly, man, I give all grace and favor to God in regards to that because I'm telling you, Chev, like I don't know how I always end up in the right position at the right moments, but I do remember that one in Saskatchewan. Like I remember they had drove down the field and we're on the. I think I was like 7 or 10 yards in the end zone, and I'm tired. Like Darren Durant, they're on like a 10 play drive. So you guys know in the CFL, a 10 play drive, 20-second clock, like you're on the field. Like it's a lot going on. And I remember sitting back and I looked at him, and I think I was guarding Getzlaff at the time, and I just you see the video, I gave him a little wave, like come this way. And and when I caught it, he threw the ball. I think he overthrew him or something. I don't know, but it ended up in my hands. And for half a second, no word of a lie, I thought about taking a knee and said, you know what? Job is done. You're off the field. You can go rest now. You just did all this driving down. You got the ball back for your offense. And half a second, I thought about it. And the other half said, hell no, you're in Saskatchewan. Shut these people up. I took off.
I absolutely love that because that's one of the things too. A lot of people don't get that kind of an insight. Like to me, I was going to apologize to you on behalf of all. We never played together, but on all the DBs.
Yeah.
I see you running down there 110 yards. I run jog 20 yards, celebrate, and head to the bench. I will celebrate with you on the sideline. That is painful. You were just on the field for 11 plays. I can't. I watch all you guys sprinting down there, and I'm celebrating, but I'm not going to join you at the party.
Yeah,
So
I don't blame you.
So Keon, I mean, so many big plays. We could go through them, and we just be talking football now. Shell and I don't want to just talk about the plays, but we do want to know, what was your most memorable moment in the CFL? You had a really long career. You were a captain of the team. You were a leader. You represented the players and the Players Association. You took on a number of roles in leadership. What was your most memorable moment, whether it was on or off the field, something that you did associated with the game?
You know what? I can say this one, which one that kind of really stuck with me is, I don't know if you remember that 2012 Grey Cup, and this is the one we lost, the 100th Grey Cup in Toronto, the one we lost. And it was the first time my family had got a chance to come up. They didn't come up to watch the game in 2008. They got a chance to come to the game in 2012. And I got my kids around, and we lost. Like I thought we were favorites to win that game. I thought we should have won that game. They just made more plays than we did. But my biggest thing was, once I left that game, to show my kids, how do you take a loss like that? Because I knew that they were watching. I wanted to cry. I wanted to, ball out. But my biggest moment was, like, honestly, just showing my kid, like, you know what, man, it's a game. It's as big as the game was. It's, how do you rebound from the game emotionally? You know what I mean? And so I wanted to show them, like, even in the height of winning, it's easy to celebrate when we win. We won. It's easy to celebrate, lift it up, and drink out the Grey Cup and do all that, and everybody singing and dancing. But it's the ones that when you lose, it shows the character of a man. And are you going to sit and blame everybody and how we did play, how we did? Because I knew I had four little eyes watching me, as they were coming. Like, how was my dad going to react out of this big game that they lost? And you know what? And for me, it was one of those things that understand, like, you know what, man, life is more than football. Like, as much as I would have liked that extra money on that Grey Cup check.
Yeah.
But life is more than football, and I want to make sure that I'm an example, to my kids, even win or loss, So that was a huge one for me, though. As much of all the big plays that I get, though, that was kind of one that really stuck out to me, just because I had to show them, who I was outside of the football, winning the game and stuff like that. So that's kind of a big deal to me.
That's the character move, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I didn't win a Grey Cup. 8 years in an 8-team league at that time, no Grey Cups. But
it's hard, isn't it?
It is hard, and it's so special when you get that opportunity. But I just find that losing almost seems a more powerful feeling than even winning. I don't know that. I won in high school, won a couple other things, but
Yeah.
I
agree, though.
Losing could be a great motivator, right? Like I know the same feeling. I mean, obviously I was in the locker room with you on that Grey Cup. I lost the first one I ever went to when I was with Edmonton. And yeah, it can galvanize you, to do better, both personally and as a team, or a loss sometimes can tear you apart. My firefighter here is coming out. One of you guys needs to change your batteries in your smoke alarms, because I hear a chirping. Is there a chirping in the background?
That's mine.
You gotta change your batteries. You know what?
Yeah.
This weekend when we change the clocks, that's when you're supposed to change your batteries. So you gotta change your batteries.
You got to
I'm on it. I'm on it.
See, I know these things. I know that sound. Okay, so we talk about your career, but we can't talk about the great career you had, Keon, without talking about that first year, that first moment. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you and I, we shared a pretty cool bond. Like you know me, I was always that guy that was talking in the locker room with everyone. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember you were a rookie. You were on the practice squad, and you and I were sitting in the steam room talking. And you kind of opened up to me. You're kind of feeling torn, right? Here you
Yeah.
are coming up to Canada, a brand new country, fresh opportunity for you, but you got your family in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And you were considering maybe going back. Like, can you walk us through that a little bit? Because I think that's a really, it's a really important story, probably in your career. It was definitely a fork in the road, right?
Absolutely, Chef. I remember that was like it was yesterday, because you come up to a brand new country, and the biggest thing about it was like I just literally came from playing 5 months of football in the Arena Football League. I was playing for the New Orleans Voodoo, and I played, and I literally was at home for maybe 3 weeks because I never had I didn't had a passport. So as soon as my passport came in, Coach Jones was like, get you up to Calgary, come up to Canada. And so I'm like, all right, man. So I'm like, all right, I can hang with it a bit though, and I kind of got going, and within practice roster here, man, you don't get paid much practice roster, and I'm sitting in the at home, and I get a chance to in the steam room with Chef, man, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going through these mixed of emotions. I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, man, this $500 ain't kicking it. It's Canadian too, so you transfer it over. I'm literally sending $300 back home to the family, and I can make more at this if I go and work at FedEx back home or something like that. And I said, and I remember talking to Chev about that, and he gave me some real good advice. It's just understanding you got to do what's best for you. You got to trust the process and kind of what's going on. And I did, and I was like so close to going home. And one of the things that stuck with me is that why am I here? You know what I mean? And I prayed about it, and I had to sit myself to the side. It's like, why am I here? Why did I decide to come up to Canada? You know what I mean? Is it to play football? Now that you're not playing, you get in your feelings now, and now you want to go home because you're not getting the opportunity that you think you should have been getting. And but for me, it was one of those like I had to sit back and really evaluate, like, is this football thing for me? Like literally, because like I don't know if you know, the Arena League closed down that following year. And I'm
Yep.
telling you, if I'd have left, I'd have been on the outside looking in. And I go into that conversation with Chevy like to this day because that was such a huge because you talk about a guy who's been in the league for a while. And he's he didn't know me that well. I'm a rookie, I'm a new guy, you know what I mean? But just tell you how closeness and open this guy is. I mean, everybody was like a brother to him. If you get a chance to sit down and you talk to him, he was open. He was going to give you all the information that he had to give. And if he didn't have it, he was going to find out where he can help you and get it from, and get it to you. And so, from that point on, it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I tell you what, God spoke because the next week, somebody ended up getting hurt. I ended up getting on. They ended up putting me on the roster. I didn't play as much though, but I was on that 46 man roster, so I was getting an opportunity to at least get game checks though. But like honestly, like I was days like away from like what I'm going home, man. I'm done with this. I'm tired of Canada, and
Well,
this was
well,
July when it was nice.
Yeah.
well. We're glad. I think Sheldon and I and all the Stamps fans, everyone in Calgary, not just Stamps fans. I mean, just for your presence in our community, in our province.
Mhm.
Like we've done a lot of work, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But you have come to this community, this province, this country, and you have become a contributor to society in a way that goes beyond football. So we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, I
Uh,
have a question in the meantime too, though, because those
Mhm.
are some of my most memorable moments as well. Is when you think
Yeah.
it's about over, but I know and be honest about this because it was a different football landscape then. Now we've got the different developmental leagues between USFL and XFL. Had that
Mhm.
been an opportunity in 2007, 2008, would you have even come up to Canada?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I don't think I would have, because I remember trying out for they had the All American League, that just came out, and they really didn't get off the ground. They had a bit of a draft, but you got to think too, like a lot of guys, they don't know much about Canada, and I hate that if I had not had an opportunity to come up to see how wonderful this country is. And by passing, it was like, you know what, I'm gonna just try, the XFL or the USFL and try to go because you guys know when they're paying in US dollars, I mean, it makes a huge difference when you can be able to get home and travel, and for me being, a day's flight away from home, it's hard, especially I was a young guy, man. I came up here and I was 25 and, and having a young family and it's hard,
You already had one child, right, at that time when
yeah,
you came
yeah,
up here?
yeah,
So
yeah.
you had
And
Keon
then
Jr.
yeah, and it's hard, when you try to come up and you want to be, I mean, a father, you want to, get in front in their life and be around them, and, and you don't want to miss those moments because the game takes so much time away from us, and we miss, maybe a kid walking, or we miss them, saying dada for the first time, you know what I mean, or doing something real quirky, you know what I mean? And we miss a lot of those moments. And I hate missing those moments. That was one of the reasons why I ended up moving my family up here because, I just like I'm nothing without my family, and that's how we is within football, like when we sticking together and we riding together, we hard to beat, baby. You know that
Yeah.
we hard to beat, and when there's a division there, it's easy to separate the guys. And we've been on teams like that when you can see that there's division in the locker room, and it's
Yep.
easy to beat the guys like that. But when you tight, you know what I mean, and you guys are rolling on our feeling, it's hard. It's hard to break up a family, and so I just wanted to make sure that I did what was best for me and my family, and to come on up. But like I said, man, football, Canada made me think about life after football. That's exactly what it did. You
Well,
know,
I'm glad you bring that up, Keon. And for those, if anyone's just joining us now, I don't know why you wouldn't start from the start, but we are talking with Keon Raymond, CFL great. We're not going to go through your resume, but you're one of the greats for the Calgary Stampeders. We're glad that you're with us today on the ride with Chevy and Nasty, and bring your family into it and making you think about life
Mhm.
after football. Before we talk about life after football and some of your life off the field, we want to ask this question of every one of our guests that we get on our show. People that have been through transition. Obviously, your career was a big factor in your life. Like everyone goes through a football career and or an athletics career or whatever job you do. And you say, well, I wasn't just a football player, right? But
Mhm.
it's a big part of your life. Like it takes up your time, it takes up your days, it takes you away from, like you said, family and events, and you put everything into it. And we talked about your first day. I want to know, when was it your last day? And I'm not talking about a chronological date where they said, hey, you're done. I'm talking about that time where you looked in the mirror and you said, that's it. I got to turn the page on this chapter of my life and I got to look forward. I want to know what that last day was like and when it hit you.
Man, well, that's a great question. For mine, I finished up in Hamilton, and I had an opportunity to go back to a couple teams the year after, and I didn't want my career to be a guy who hopped to different teams, trying to find a way just to trying to be a piece. Actually, my last contract I signed was with the Stampeders. I think it was 2016. Just in case if they needed an extra body, so I was kind of on their I retired kind of list and things like that. But kind of after that, man, I was preparing and I was running sprints and I'm like, man, I'm getting into it. And I think I pulled my hamstring. I was running too fast and I pulled my hamstring, and I was kind of going through the rehab phase of it. All those things. It takes time to kind of get back. And for me, it was one of those things where I was just like, you know what, this is it. This is it. And as much as I feel like my career, I'm supposed to, be one of those guys that, they have a press conference and be like, you know what, this is the end, for me. And for me and a lot of guys, it don't end the way that you like it to and you want it to end. That's just the reality of this game that we play. But for me, my wife, she sat down with me one day and she said, you need to retire. And so what I did was I wrote a letter to myself. I sat down and I wrote a letter to myself, about how good the game has been to me, how much appreciation that I have. And it was just a walking away from the game for me. It was like I'm ready to pass the torch. I'm ready to, whether it's my son that wants to go to the next level, the kids in my program that want to go. It's now become teacher now within the game, and whereas as much as I still believe I can give you a quarter, fourth quarter,
You sound like me.
maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
You sound
No,
like
I
me.
know.
I could give
Yeah,
you a
yeah,
November.
yeah,
I could give
yeah.
2 weeks in November.
When it matters, that's it. That's it. But
How,
uh,
how,
but
how keep going, keep going.
no, no, but I was saying, but the thing was like, sitting down and writing the letter to myself, about, how good football has been to me and my family, and kind of signing in parting ways with it, the playing career, and it hurt because like you said, man, I played it for so long. I've been playing football since I was 6, and like, who are you outside of football? I
Hmm.
wore a helmet majority of the life that I haven't worn a helmet. You know what I mean? I've worn a helmet more times than I haven't. And to being able to walk away, and a lot of guys, don't know, like, it was a bit of depression that kind of set in a bit because you're trying to find out who you are. You know what I mean? When the lights ain't on and people yelling, and I'll give a cool story really quick. And I remember I was coming from one of the Stamps games, and it was one of their last games or something. And I was at the Red and White Club, and the game was over and everything. And so I'm coming down, and I'm the only one on the field. And I don't know why I did this, but I don't know. I reenacted my interception that I caught in Hamilton in the snow. I don't know. I'm just, the lights are on. I'm on the field. I catch the ball. I do like a little shake. You know what I mean? And I'm just trying to, like, like a kid. You know what I mean? You sit in the stands. It's full. You hear them yelling, and no word of a lie. I get down to the end zone. And as soon as I got to the end zone and you're ready to walk off the field, the lights cut off in the stadium.
Nice. Wow.
I was like, you know what? I was like, I
I got
appreciate
goosebumps.
that.
Yeah,
I'm telling you,
man.
man, it cut off, man. And I was like, this is it. I appreciate it. Job well done type thing. And I walked off the field, man. And so for me, that was kind of one of those things, where, like I say, man, football was key and it was good. But like I say, man, when those lights cut off, I couldn't have wrote that story better. I
Mm.
couldn't have wrote that story better. But
Man.
like I said, man, it was just one of those signals that God say, yeah, you've done well. You've done well. This is it for you. But it's good.
That's
So
amazing.
then, with the transition out of that, because like anybody that's left the game, it's more than just a job. It's not like you worked at
Hmm.
FedEx for 15 years and it was your identity. It was your dream. Like literally, from the time
Hmm.
you picked up that ball, you just dreamt of making that play. It becomes such a big part of your identity. How was that transition? That next year, and what do you think was the key of it going smoothly for you, going well?
Yeah, well, you know what? To me, it was one of those things where, like, you had to being able to separate it, because I was always walking around like I'm Keon Raymond, and I used to drop, yeah, I'm Calgary Stampeder. You know what I mean? And now I'm a former Stampeder. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where some people still may know who I am throughout the city. Some like, nah, I've never heard of the guy,
Yeah.
or I don't watch CFL. I watch NFL. You got those.
Yeah.
You got those. But for me, it was it was one of those things where it was tough to to really walk away from it because the longer you play, like, the more of an identity you have in it. You know what I mean? It's harder for a guy. You play a season and you don't make it. You may then, oh, I played up there once, but you get a chance to get into that job for, man, you talking about 10 years of playing professional. I graduated from college. I didn't know what to do after that. Like, I didn't have a clue what to do. I didn't have a clue what to do. I was like, do I go back to school? You know what I mean? Do I, you know what I mean? Do I try a coach? Like, what are the options? And I just didn't know. But I got to give a quick shout out to Jack Fulton,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
he's been in our locker room. What I mean, since I was there, and I met him with Chevy. You know what I mean? I think it was around 2009, 2010 or so. And for him to come in, he puts on these job fairs for guys, trying to help guys get jobs. Some of the guys drop the ball on him, but I wanted to be one of those guys that, what I mean, that represented for him. So once I finished football, man, he knew the general manager at the Marriott Hotel. And a lot of people don't know, man, I worked security third shift at the hotel for 3 years, graveyard, and trying to run a football camp. But, it's one of those things where, I'm at the hotel and you're the football player. That's what they
Yeah.
call me. You're the football player.
You know what, Keon, you bring up so many interesting points, but yeah, to your shout out to Jack Fulton for
Hmm.
people listening. Jack Fulton runs what's called Life Choice Dynamics, and
Hmm.
basically he's devoted a large portion of his life to helping CFL football players set up life after football. I mean, I think the slogan is the best of your life for the rest of your life.
Yep. Hmm.
I don't know it offhand, but Jack's really one of those guys that's a saintly figure to a lot of guys, a father figure in the locker room,
Hmm.
and really helping guide people. Because one, you don't make a lot of money in the
Nope.
CFL, so when you retire, you gotta. Most guys aren't saving a lot of money, especially American players on
Hmm.
that Canadian money. The other thing too, when you are playing football, they discourage you from thinking about life after football because they think it
That's
distracts
right.
you from
Yep.
your role as a football player. So to
Hmm.
have someone like that to kind of be in your ear, and like you said, guys drop the ball. Why do they drop the ball? Maybe because they feel too much pressure just to focus on football, or it's a lot to focus on football and anything else. Both Sheldon and I did that for our whole careers,
Hmm.
doing different jobs, but it's a lot of pressure. It's so much easier in the off season just to focus on training
I,
and
I
just sitting
never
on the
I never
couch.
worked. I was just football. I did some public speaking, and that was
But you know
I
what?
walked out, and that's the other thing is you come out of football. Well, what are your skills? Well, my skills. I had a hell of a get off. I had a
Hmm.
good swim move, and I could hit the quarterback.
Yeah, how's that going to
How do
help
you
you
apply?
on
How
your
does
real
that
estate
apply to the
option?
rest of your life? Like, yeah, man, you
But
can
but
read that out and jump it like no other,
but
right?
the
But
things
you have to reinvent yourself.
and the
Hmm.
things we're talking about now has applications off the football field. I mean, my job now currently as a firefighter, I see this with career firefighters, guys that have started in the fire department, in their 20s, 30 years of service, retire at 60. What do I do now? A lot of
Hmm.
people face these obstacles or
Hmm.
these transitions um, things in life that they've got to change from. Some of them experience it a lot later in life, whereas professional athletes and guys like us that have played a lot of years, we experience it in our 30s, maybe late 20s, and it's like, yeah, what next? Like you said, you've been wearing a helmet longer than you did anything else. So very interesting. But after football, before we talk a little bit about what's going on with your life, you
Hmm.
mentioned your family so much. You
Hmm.
mentioned your relationship with God. It's
Hmm.
prominent with you. I want to go back to your upbringing. Okay, you and
Hmm.
I, we gotten to know each other a lot over the years we played together. We did a lot of work on the road, speaking to different little communities all across Alberta.
Hmm.
We're talking about domestic violence, empowering
Hmm.
young men and boys. You have a real personal connection to that. We talked about a father figure in
Hmm.
Jack Fulton. Can you take us a little bit through your upbringing and how that shaped you into the family man you are now? Because you didn't have an easy life.
No, it wasn't the best, and I know there's probably people who's probably had worse, but for me, just kind of growing up, it was one of those things where you witness a lot of domestic violence, and it seemed to be normal, kind of where I grew up at, and it was almost an easier thing that you just kind of turn your head and you ignore, and so I give big props to my mom, you know what I mean, for her having the courage to being able to move and get out of on a situation when I was a kid growing up. Like people don't know, man, we had a 2 hour trip, all the way to Seattle, Washington, where we moved, and we stayed in the numerous of women's shelters throughout my time there, just so she could get on her feet. And so,
How old were
when
you
we
then, Keon? Not sorry to
uh,
interrupt, but how old were you then?
I think I was around the second or third grade.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was a lot of weight. I remember one of the moments, my brother and sister, we just jump into this shelter and they're like, oh, it's furnished already, and there's pots and they're jumping on beds, there's TVs and they're excited because they're young, they don't know what's going on. I'm fairly young as well too, and I remember my mom in the kitchen, she's crying because mom, she doesn't want to have her kids. I mean, grew up in a situation like this or having to depend on somebody like my mom. She's a strong black woman, and she's always want to make sure she provides, and for her to feel helpless at a point, where she can't provide. And that's why I'm such grateful for, women's shelters. And that's why when we got a chance to speak with the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, like I jumped at the opportunity to do so. Like they asked me, there was not a second guess to do so, for me to being able to share my story, but also impact the next generation of young men and women that are coming up and being able to learn from my situation or they're having a situation. Randy, you can attest, it's probably a lot of stories that a lot of these kids that were going through, that were similar to that and not knowing how do they handle themselves in these situations or how I've seen my mom and my dad go through something like this and who do I talk to, having the courage, to do so. And they see this football player come up, and I always brought all my rings out, and they're like, well, this guy, was able to come out through it and he seems to be okay. Maybe I can too. And that's what I try to make sure the kids know, like you can, like your current situation, man, does not depict who you're going to be when you grow up. I mean, like this just a season in life. And I understood that. And so like it was one of those things, Chevy, like, man, it was tough to deal with, but I was glad to be able to kind of give back into that passion.
So how does that all translate to? And I think I got to assume that it's really closely knit.
Hmm.
Your relationship with God
Hmm.
and your your desire to be a great
Hmm.
family man.
Hmm.
How do you because it's easy to say, hey, I learned from this and I could teach other people.
Yeah.
How do you put that into your own home?
To me, one of my favorite things is that understanding that we have two fathers, and there's an earthly father that I was given, and then there's my spiritual father, and me understanding. So the earthly father gives us the vision of what a dad is, present, you know what I mean, provider, those things. Not perfect though, you know what I mean. So the things that my biological father lacks, my spiritual father gives, And so for me, it was understanding that, and I had a real good conversation, with my dad afterwards in forgiveness and just letting them know, like, man, I forgive you. Like, I know you didn't have a dad that was in your life to show you how to treat, what I mean, your spouse, your partner, you know what I mean, your wife. You didn't have that. So how do you know how to treat someone? You know what I mean? And so for me, I try to make sure I keep my faith at the forefront of what I do. And I always like, I'm not shy about sharing it too. You know what I mean? We live
Yeah.
in a day now where, we can't sit there and say that or say this. Like, I want to make sure that, every kid that comes into my program, Chevy and Nasty, I pray for them. Whether they're Muslim, they're atheist, whatever it is, I make sure I pray for them. You know what I mean? It's not a kid that's not going to come through my program and not get a prayer from Coach K. But for me, it was one of those things where I knew that my Father in heaven has a plan for me and understanding that He's going to direct my path and show me, okay, all right, this is how your earthly father was. This is how I want you to be in regards to, life and making sure that you're present in the things that you do. So like I'm grateful that like all I can do is be me. It's all I can do is be me.
Well, you do a good job of that.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, like just the maturity, and I'm actually really happy to hear that you've been able to connect with your dad and work those
Mm-hmm.
things out. Because I think any parent, all you really want for your kids is better than what you had.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, yeah, we can blame our dads all we want, but our
Mm-hmm.
dads were the victims of their dads. And at some point, you just got to stand up and say, "I'm going to be the change." And your
Amen.
faith, and your spiritual father. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty powerful stuff. Um, but if it's okay, I'd like to change gears here just a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because there's another thing that just fascinates me. It's when you've got a great American story. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
You grew up. Things didn't always go perfect, but you fought your way to that scholarship at Middle Tennessee State.
Mm-hmm.
You played your way to professional football, but now you've got a great Canadian story. Your boys
Yeah.
are playing. You stayed in Calgary. Your boys are playing football, Canadian rules football,
Mm-hmm.
and K2, your
Yeah.
junior, just wrapped up a year at junior. Now, did I hear he signed with the U of A Golden Bears?
Yes, he did. Yeah, I'm
So now
super
your kids are
proud.
even playing Canadian football. You got to be proud. That's
Right,
amazing.
full circle.
Full
Yeah.
circle. But in Canada,
Yeah, man, you know what? I'm super proud of that young man. Like, no word of a lie, because I mean, he's gotten all the praise these last couple of days for him signing and stuff like that. And I remember he was in the height of the COVID, where he didn't get a chance to
Yeah.
finish his high school. He didn't graduate. They didn't get a chance to walk. He graduated, but they didn't get a chance to walk. And he had a couple of his buddies. They were kind of going off to school, and they didn't kind of know what he was going to do. And there was a bit of depression there, and a lot of people really don't understand too. Like there's been a path, for this young man, for him to being able to get to this point. I told him the work's just starting now, but it was a point to where I ended up sending him down to the States, to community college in Kansas for him to play, because you can just see there was you know your children. You know what I mean? And I remember sitting down, me and Bianca sat down on the couch with him, and we can just tell, you know what I mean? Like he's going through something. You know what I mean? And he's not talking, but he's going through something. And I can see it's weighing on him, and it's how do you pull your kid out of that? Because at the end of the day, we're not his only influence. And how do we pull him out of that? How do we pull him out of that? And so I'm glad to know, man, like it was a lot of prayer going over that young man, and for him to, me to be blessed to get the job in Prince George, and him to say, Dad, I'm coming to play with you, and to literally show his tail out there in Prince George, man, in junior football, to open up a door for him to get a scholarship at U of A, man. So like we're proud of him, man, the work he's put in. Like, I can't be happier.
Hey, didn't he get a 100-yard interception return last year at Prince George?
Yeah,
His
it
son
was a
Cam?
100 yard. Yeah, it was a
I
hundred
watched
yard
it.
field goal return, and it was
Wow.
against the national. It was against the national champions. So the team who won the national championship, the Okanagan Sun, he did it against those guys, man. Which you talking about? He had a tremendous game that week too. He was covering Mike O'Shea's son. Mike O'Shea's son was first team All Canadian, and I don't think he had a catch on Junior. And it was a battle. When you talk about hopefully these boys and they get a chance to play at the level we played at, and they can pull back the record books and see like these two have been battling since junior football. It just makes for a great Canadian story in football.
And you
And
know
I'll tell
what?
you what, Chevy, I grew up in the prairies, right? The progression was high school to junior to university, right? You end up at University of Saskatchewan, University of Regina. But for your son to go off there, and for you to experience a little bit of time in small town, rural, remote British Columbia, I mean, that's got to be crazy. Prince George is a trip.
Man, it's 8 hours from everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere, everywhere. The next closest town is 8 hours. Everywhere you go, man. So, but it was a great experience, and we got an opportunity to give some kids, chance to play football. Which another junior team, more kids to play football in this country is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
And you kicked it off. I mean, how tough was that to start a brand new program from scratch?
Woo, that's where these couple grades coming in at for me. But no, what it was tough. When you talk about sitting trying to lay a foundation, from a program that has none. When you talk about from team rules, from practice, from schedule, from hiring everybody. Finding somebody to do practice film, breakdown film, what I mean, travel. So you're talking about the whole kit and caboodles of things. But to me, it was a learning experience. Like I got a chance to wear a multitude of hats, for whether it's director of football operations, general managing, head coach. So it was a great experience for me to really learn the ins and outs of football. Now, I probably wouldn't put that on anybody else to to take that load to start up from the ground up. But like I say, man, there's a great community out there. Those people are, they get a chance to win some games. They're gonna sell out there. It's a good football community out there.
Nice. Now, I saw you light up when you talked about your son playing for you in junior football, returning that field goal return. You lit up. But now I'm going to ask you, who did it nicer, Papa or Junior?
You know what I'm gonna have to say is, like, I remember in the beginning of the year, Chef, I had to chew him out. I did. I had to chew him out. It was one play, and I was watching, and he didn't run to the ball. Somebody did. He didn't run to the ball, or something happened, and he was the last one cut off the field. And I grabbed him, and I came to him, and I might have been mic'd up too at the time. I don't know, but there's a picture of me standing real close to him, and I pulled him close to me, where it was just me and him. He can really hear what I was saying, and I told him off. I said, if this is something you trying to do, this effort is not what it is. Like, you better get your shit together and you better turn this another page. Because if you trying to do this full time, this ain't what it is. You might as well hang it up right then and there. And I walked off from him.
I
And
thought
I
I
tell you,
thought you
I
were
don't
gonna
know.
I thought you were gonna say you pulled him real close. You said, "Wait till I tell your mom."
Hey, that might would have helped a little bit, a little bit better. But you know what? Sometimes, man, you need a little gas, a little fire lit up under you, and I think that was one of those things where he really understood. Okay, if this is something I'm trying to do, let me go ahead and take heed to it. Like, man, like, you have to be the best at your position, or at least try to be the best at your position on your team, wherever you are, to get another opportunity to go somewhere else. And I think he did that. So I'm super proud of him. You know what I mean? Now the next one's trying to get, Deshaun, get him into school somewhere next. So, I'm happy for him.
That's
There you
amazing.
go. That's awesome. Um, so now you're back in Calgary. What's next for Keon? Tell us a little bit about what you're into now and what you're going to be doing next.
Well, you know what? I appreciate it, man. It's been like, when we talked about that, what do you do after football type deal? I started the company, K25 Sports. And we first started with basketball. I ran a basketball program
I
I called
remember.
it I called it Tiny Tykes.
Yeah.
Tiny Tykes basketball. And I'm telling you, man, I don't know why I did that, but people were just so anxious to give me all that little bitty kids for a whole 2 hours and leave. No, but it was good though, because basketball has always been a first passion of mine, and so we kind of started that going, and we started with flag football and kind of bridging it up, and then I started kind of getting into the 7-on-7 thing, and a buddy of mine, Al Penny Legion, rest in peace. He passed away, domestic violence, a few years ago, a couple years ago, man, and which is it's heartbreaking, heartbreaking. Got son who played football as well, coached in the Calgary community as well. But he kind of helped me kind of coach and kind of get this thing going. And I didn't have a clue kind of what I was doing with this 7-on-7, but I knew that the city was lacking something. And anytime, you go to McDonald's, there's different things you can order. They just don't have a Big Mac, do they?
That's
Oh,
right.
they got the filet of fish, they got the chicken, they got the nuggets, they got the salad. And so I was thinking, I said, you know what, maybe in the spring we'll put together I think my earpiece came out. There we go. There we go. We'll put together a spring 7-on-7 league. Something that could, produce help skill development. We've coached, me and Chevy coached, Adam football, with the Cowboys. And one of the biggest things that I did find out, just learned that there's not a lot of skill development for kids. Kids here can play just as well as the kids in the States or anywhere else. It's just not a lot of skill development.
Skill
So that's kind of
development.
how, yeah, that's kind of how big time players, kind of came to. My wife kind of came up with the name. I don't want to give her too much credit, but she did. She was like, you got to call it something that resonates with who you were when you played.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Keon, you brought up us coaching Cowboys football, so we coached together the Adams. I think that if I was
Hmm.
there for your first experience as a Calgary Stampeder, I think I was there for your first experience as a coach. Now I don't know if you're going to
Hmm.
remember this story, and I hope your coaching has evolved since then because mine did too. But you remember our kids? We got an opportunity to play at McMahon Stadium. The little guys under the big lights in September. You remember it snowed? And we thought it would
Hmm.
be a great idea for these kids to roll around in the snow to get used to the cold. You remember that? You remember what happened when the sun went down? When the sun went down, we told all these kids they were doing snow angels and jumping in the snow and diving in the snow. So, yeah, get used to it. We're going to toughen them up. Man, that sun went down over McMahon Stadium. By halftime, all our kids were crying. No,
They was done.
Oh man.
uh,
Come on, guys.
hey, we killed them. We killed them. I think we're better than that, though.
Yeah, yeah, they were done. They were not trying to have anything else. That sun went down. They was like, time out. Can we go to the locker room now? We're done with this. So no, but it was a great opportunity though. You know what I mean, to being able to coach and just to give back. I mean, to a lot of those young guys too. And so like I really appreciate the time that we had coaching. And like I said, man, Chevy was always prepared. Like he
Yeah.
had the depth. He was one of those guys. The depth charts already. I had mine on a piece of paper, and I wrote them in the car when we was coming.
I used
Chevy's
to
was hyped. He
I
was
used to
ready.
actually do have grade sheets. So we'd watch, we break down film afterwards with the older kids. I gave them out
Hmm.
grade sheets because I know I always love to see how I did, how many production points. And the older kids love that. Like where you can take some of those elements and experiences from the pro game and make those
Yeah.
kids feel special and really get that high level of coaching. That's kind of cool.
So
So
Keith,
with your 7-on-7 league then, and talking about fundamentals, how many of those fundamentals from touch ball translate to their later football?
So the best thing about that is within the 7-7 they learn points of contact. So that's kind of one of the biggest things that a lot of the kids learn. And they're like, well, why don't you just do flag? I do a flag program for our younger ages, but when we're teaching the kids game within football, we're trying to get them to progress at the next level. 7-on-7 allows them to focus on ball placement, man technique, and eyes. So when you play flag, if they get it, their eyes immediately, instead of trying to go for a ball, they immediately try to look for the person's flag to grab it instead of trying to go for the ball. Within the 7-on-7, their eyes immediately go to the ball, how do I defend? How do I catch? How do I try to knock the ball down? Am I using my right hand? Am I using the left hand? So it's so much skill and a technical base for these kids just understanding football. Like you think about it, when we played a pro, there was not one day we didn't do skelly. Every day we did scaling. Every single day we did scaling. There was not a practice that we did not do scaling. And it wasn't tackle. It was just making sure you understand your zone drops. You understand your drops, man coverage. Can you do those things? And so that's what we try to promote with the 7-on-7. I know we're a little bit behind in Canada, where, people, I've heard some coaches, even high school coaches, why are these kids playing 7 on? It's just touch. Why are they playing touch? They need to come out and they need to play tackle, And I don't want to throw any shade on anybody, but I played 10 years pro. I mean, I'm from the States. I understand the progression of football. I understand kind of how these things go, and just as well as I know that, understanding the skill development portion of a lot of with these kids, you have to be smart to play football. People think that you just got to be big, strong, and fast. Now, granted, those things help. They help. But if you're not smart within the game, understanding if I got 3 receivers to this side, I get an out route, somebody's going to come underneath on top of it, open up that window. Like I got a 12-year-old right now on our 7-on-7 team, man. And I'm telling you, he's probably going to be within the next 5 or 6 years. He's probably going to be one of the top players in Alberta. Young kid too, out of Airdrie. And just really understands. He's learning to understand the game of football, and so that's all I try to do within 7. And it's freaking fun too. Like
yeah.
I'm telling you, man, I've had more kids that have never played football. They come out and play 7-on-7 for the first time, and in the fall go and play tackle football because they've had so much fun. And then I've had some kids that play tackle football first, and it's not form, and they say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I've never had a kid that played 7-on-7 say, no, I'm not going to play tackle. They
And,
always transition to play tackle.
and you know what? The neat thing about what you're doing, Keon, and what the 7-on-7 does, it not only does it raise football IQ, which I do believe is sorely lacking in kids. Most of their
Hmm.
football IQ comes from playing Madden football. And Madden
Hmm.
football is U.S. rules. So I
Hmm.
think it does a couple of things. One, it raises the football IQ. And for those that want to go on to play tackle, that's great.
Hmm.
But I know Sheldon. I know myself. I know many former Stampeders. The next progression after tackle football, or for anyone once they get into adulthood, is that they wind up playing touch football or flag football,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and it creates this lifelong love of the sport, right? That you can
Yes.
play beyond the tackle portion of your life. Like
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
can enjoy football just the way my sons play hockey now. When they're done
Hmm.
community level, and they'll still be able to play beer league. whether
Yeah.
it's soccer, basketball, any sport, you could play past that highest level that you can
Yeah.
achieve, whether it's in school or not. Football is the only one that when it's done.
Yeah.
And I believe that what you offer to these kids is an understanding that, you know what, if you love this sport where you can run and jump and catch and cover people and enjoy, like you said, it's fun. You could
Hmm.
actually do it beyond that I guess critical window to make it as a professional football player. And I think the
Hmm.
goal of all sport should be to create lifelong participation and
Hmm.
not just like I'm going to do it because maybe I could get a scholarship or maybe I could play pro,
Yes.
because that's a real bumpy and a real disappointing road if that's your only
Absolutely.
outlook on sport, right? And Sheldon, I know
Hmm.
you kind of got up and come back, but we're just talking about that lifelong participation in sport. And I know you, Sheldon,
Oh
play
yeah.
flag football and you love it.
So yeah, so like coming out of the league, I had this guy that was always a neighbor of mine. You got to come play on my flag league. Like, come on, dude. I'm not gonna go play flag, right? You played against like, all these like 24, 25 year olds right out of college. Some
Hmm.
guys just roided up and just trying to make a name for themselves. And
Especially,
I just thought
especially
I
when they
thought it was
find out that you
baloney.
played too. Especially when they find out that you
When they know
played.
who you are, 100%, yeah. And plus, and they're not really good. Like with professionals, you don't have random guys rolling around your knees, right? When you
Yeah.
got kids that don't know what they're doing, anything can happen. Anyway, those were the excuses I told myself. Anyway, and one
Yeah.
year I just said, you know what, I'm going to go play, but I'm not going to play defensive line.
Yeah.
Offensive lineman in flag can catch the football, so it's like I'm going to be like a receiver, right? I'm going to be an
Okay.
offensive lineman. And yeah, it was tons of fun. It had been probably 10, 15 years since I had that much fun playing football. I loved playing
Hmm.
pro, but in terms of just getting out with the boys and playing a game, it was fun. I loved it.
Well, fellas, we talked a lot today. We got a great man. We covered football, we covered life, we covered transition, we covered family. Man, there's so much we do. I think we got to end this off with maybe a funny story or something. Now, Keon, you and I, we used to have so many good car rides home from the airport. Like we used to, everybody used to land and they'd be like, "Where are we going to go downtown?" and all that. And you and I were like, we can't do that. We got to get home, right? But I think
Hmm.
the best car ride we had was the time that we thought we were going to miss the airplane. Do you remember that?
I do, and it was, I was driving by there the other day, and like I said, it was a super funny story. And Huff is such a stickler about being late. You know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah.
Like you cannot be late. You know what I mean with Huff. And I know we were getting out. I had car problems or something that morning, and Chevy, he lived around the corner. We lived in the same neighborhood. I'm like, Chev, I need a ride, and I'm like, all right. He said, I got you. I'll be outside here quick. And I'm talking about the time is like crunching. And we're like, man, we're probably gonna hit traffic. We're not
On
gonna get
Crowchild.
there on
Crowchild.
Crowchild. We're not gonna get there in time. And I'm telling you, man, we jump in the car.
We were
As soon as we
sweating.
got off,
Sweating.
I'm telling man, he was riding. What kind of car did you have? Because you was rolling. You was
Hey,
rolling.
and we weren't even saying a word. We were both like, man, he's gonna leave without us.
Yes,
Man.
yes. And what happened? We got on Crowchild and we're driving and we looked like it was open. We looked at each other and like, it's Sunday. Like it's Sunday.
Nobody.
There was like
Oh
no
my god.
cars. We looked.
Nobody.
We
Yeah.
did like the double take. Like, oh, it's Sunday.
Oh, Sunday. Yeah.
and,
So,
and we
man,
have.
you talking
And
about
I just put the foot down on the pedal. We just rolled. We
Yeah.
rolled in hot. Oh
you
man.
talking about panic, but it was one of those things like football, when you talk about all the glory days and playing and the wins and losses on the field, man, like it's stories like that resonate, the relationships that you have that continues to build like what we got going, and so like that story is hilarious. I'm always come back to it, man, because you just never know, man, how situations change in an
Yeah, man.
instant. You know what I mean? Like
Hey,
from deep shit to
I, it was so funny,
Oh
man.
man.
Well,
Mhm.
listen, I think, I would say you're our favorite guest, which you are, because so far you're our first guest.
First guess.
Hey, hey,
But you know
hey.
what, Keon, man, like we're gonna do this again. We're gonna put up the links to your big time players. Make sure that we get some information out there. I think it's great that we end the show with a driving story because this is the ride, and we really want to thank you for being on the ride and thank everyone else for joining us on the ride. Last words?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys so much for having me. And like I say, man, I'm glad you guys decided to go ahead and get back to this, man. Like this is something that I'm telling you what's missing, up here, in the league, up in this country, podcasts like this, you guys understanding the grounds between playing and outside of football life. It's more than just football. It's about life. It's about men. It's about brotherhood. It's about family. It's about all those things, man. And so I wish you guys the absolute best with this, man. You guys are definitely my favorite podcast now. But no, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, yes.
All
Sheldon,
right,
take it
Keon
home,
Raymond,
baby.
everybody, absolutely killed it today. Keon, thanks again for joining us, and thank you for listening to Chevy and Nasty with Keon Raymond on the ride.